In this video, we are going to work on different input elements using form element. And we are going to create a layout like this, which includes different form elements like name, email, what you love, choose a color, rate movie out of 10, book genre you love, and I agree to terms or not. And when you click on submit button, it should be able to display the information in a form of model, which will have a button using which you can close it. So to create this structure in HTML, I have already created it. If we take a closer look at it, it contains a form element with a class of container with different form control. Each form control contains an input element and a label. Each input element has a name property. Why do we need the name property? Name property helps us in accessing the values from form element easily. So here the name is name because we are taking name from the user. Here it is an email. Then we have choice. Here we have color. And going forward we have movie, book and terms. So once we fill in all the data and click on submit button, we will have to display the model. I've already created the model layout. All we have to do is to just add a class open to it and refresh it. As soon as you do that, this information will be visible here. And other thing we need to do, as soon as we click on this button, we will have to take out this open class from here and refresh it. So that will remove the model. Now let's start working on our JavaScript to take the input from this form element. I'll open the console so we will be able to debug easily. So first thing we need to do is to select the form element. So we'll say let form is equal to query selector form element. We are using form element here is because there is only one form element, so it is easier to do that. As soon as a user clicks on submit, you need to get the data. So for that, we need to add an event listener on form element using add event listener of type submit. So whenever submit happens, you have to call this function. So this function will get access to the event object, and here we can just say console.log event. Now just to test it, what we can do, we can just add some information and click on submit. As soon as you click on submit, you will get access to the event object. Each event object has a property called target, and when the target is a form element, it also has a special property known as elements. Elements contain all the input elements inside a form element. So here we can see because we have given all the names like adventure, book, choice, color, email, fiction, we have access to all these things here. And based on that, we will be able to get access to all the information. Now let's see how we can access the property. So we know event object has a property called target, and when the target is a form element, we can have access to elements property that contains all the input element inside a form. So we'll say event.target.elements, and we are accessing name element. So that will be the whole input element, and each input element has a property called value. So in this way, we will be able to access the value. So let's refresh it, type the name Arya, and click on submit. We are able to get access to Arya. Similarly, what if I want to get access to the next value, that is email? So we'll change this to email and refresh this page, put it Arya, and here we'll say arya@gmail.com and click on submit. We can see that we are getting access to all the values here. So in this way, we will be able to access all the information one after another. Here we are repeating this event.target.elements multiple times. So the better way to go about it is we'll just define a variable called elements is equal to event.target.elements. So now instead of writing it multiple times, we can just directly write it like this: elements.name.value, elements.email.value. We can also add it inside an object outside, and for that we'll just define a variable called user data so we can use it later on. That is an object, and what we need to do is we need to access the properties and add it inside user data. So here we can say user data dot name is equal to this. Similarly, we will be able to add other informations like we want to change the name. So here we will be able to add email. Next is going on to what do you love? Let's look at the name of it. So here the name is choice. So we need to access choice.value. Next is movie. Then we have book. And at last we have terms. So we'll say movie, book, and at last we will have a property named as terms. Let's go ahead and log the value of user data. Refresh this page, fill in all the information, and we can see all the informations here. Book, choice, color, email, movie, name, and terms. And if you look at the value will be exactly what we fill in. So for example, movie has a value of 3. So here we are fitting in 3. The choice is adventure. We have clicked on it. And similarly, we have all the data came in. So in this way, we are able to access all the information here. Now, all we need to do is to display this information in the form of a model. So first thing is, as soon as this happens, you click on submit, we need to add a class of open in the model here. So for that, we will be able to access this div so we can add some property. Let model is equal to query selector, and we'll just select it using the class model overlay. And here, as soon as that happens, we have to say model.classlist.add will add a class of open. So as soon as we click on that, it will open a model. Now what we need to do, as soon as we click on this button, it should be able to hide it. How can we do that? So for that, we'll just select this button and I'll call it close. We'll use query selector and let's look at the property of the button. Then we can find it has a class of model close. I'll select it using model close. Now as soon as it is selected, what I need to do is, so whenever an event of type click happens on this button, you need to call this function, and this function needs to remove the open class from the model. So for that, I'll just say remove open. Let's see if it is working or not. Click on submit, click on close. It is working properly. Once the model is working properly, all we need to do is to use the data that we are storing while doing this and display it here. So let's go ahead and work on that part. So the way I'm thinking of doing it is by creating a function named displayInfo that will accept the data, and by default it will default to empty object. So let's see how we are going to put in the data. So for that, we have to display all the data in this format. So let's just go ahead and group it. So what I'll do, I'll group it in a class named model info. So it will be easier for us to push in data here. And we will have to select that element. So we'll select that element and store it into model info. Now what we need to do here is to add this information. So first thing I need to do is to create a h1 element. So I'll say create element h1 and store it into a variable called h1. And we need to add the information hello Samir. Samir is coming from the user data dot name. So what we'll do is we'll say h1 dot inner text is equal to backtick, and here we'll just say hello, and we'll use dollar sign. This is where we'll get the data, and we'll say data dot name. At last we need to push this into model info. So we'll say model info dot append. What we need to append? We need to append the information of h1. Now we just need to remove this whole thing from here, so it will not be visible in the start. Refresh it, click on submit, nothing is visible. We have to run this function as soon as we click on submit. So here we'll go ahead and say display information, and we'll pass user data here. Refresh it, push the name Arya, and click on submit. And we can see hello Arya is visible here. All we need to do is to do the same thing here for all the fields one after another, and at last we'll have the same output. So let me just do it. Once all the elements are created, we just need to append it into model info. Now let's check out whether it's working or not. So here we'll fill in the information area, we'll put it series, choose a color, rate it 1, non-fiction, I agree. Click on submit and here we can see the information, email, watching choice, color, rating of the movie, book, non-fiction, and then we have you have accepted the terms and condition. If you don't accept it, then it will change the value, and you can see that it is coming up multiple times, and it is the same problem we had it earlier. So this function is getting called multiple times. So how we can fix it is by saying model info.inner html should be equal to empty. So let's refresh it, fill in all the information, get the information here, click on close, remove it, and you can see it here that it's coming, you have accepted the terms. Let's see what is going wrong with this one. So let's look at user data. When we look at user data, we are able to see the value on here. Okay, so the problem I think that we are having is terms is a checkbox, and checkbox has a checked property. Rather than accessing the value property, we should be accessing checked. So checked will return true or false based on that. So here, instead of testing it on true or false, we'll just say if it is true, go ahead and do this message, otherwise do it. Go ahead and display this message, otherwise display the other message. Let's refresh it and see if it is working or not. So we'll click on I agree the terms, submit it, and we can see that you have accepted the terms. Let's not click on it and click on submit. You have not accepted it. So it is working properly for us. Now it is working properly for us. So in this way, we are able to complete this handling form elements using multiple input elements. And the way we did it is by adding an event listener on form and using event.target.elements to access all the property and storing it into an object. And at last what we did is to display all the information by creating element and pushing all the data in the model.